Most shonen protagonists suffer. That's normal. But Yuji Itadori feels different, because it doesn't feel like the story puts Yuji through suffering on the path to a better future. It feels like the story never really intended for him to get there in the first place. From the moment he becomes Sukuna's vessel, everything about his life starts moving in a single direction: loss. And the more the story goes on, the clearer it becomes that Yuji isn't fighting to win. He's fighting because he was never given the option to stop. When we're first introduced to Yuji in Season 1, he is portrayed as an upbeat and friendly guy who likes to help around whenever he can. One thing that does stick out though is that he's really strong for someone who's supposedly just a normal human. And what's interesting is that this isn't just a background detail. It starts to quietly shape his entire story from the start. The events that led up to him consuming Sukuna's finger all seem like chance, and maybe that is kinda true, but later we find out that Kenjaku was pulling the strings for things to end up the way they did. After Yuji eats the first finger and revives Ryomen Sukuna, his fate was set in stone. It was a canon event that would forever change the Jujutsu world and his own life. During the earlier episodes though, this massive turning point is brushed off. Like yeah, the strongest sorcerer in all of history is back, but we got Gojo. But we now know in hindsight how significant Yuji becoming the vessel of Sukuna was. But the important part isn't that his fate was manipulated. It's that from this moment onward, Yuji stops being in control of the direction his life takes. Yuji didn't become the vessel of Sukuna because he was the chosen one. The truth is way darker, to be honest. He was designed. His freakishly strong body was built specifically to hold Sukuna. He was born for this purpose alone by Kenjaku from the start. He was being observed to ensure he'd walk down the path that Kenjaku laid out for him, and his body was bred to hold a malevolent identity, hell-bent on death and destruction, a sharp contrast to himself who was just trying to do good. This path leads him to lose many people he cares about, and that's what makes his suffering feel different. He suffers for something he didn't fully choose, and people die because of his actions, and that starts changing him. "I'm just a cog," Yuji says to Hikari. "Not a hero or a savior or a dreamer, a cog." When we first saw Yuji, he was trying to help people and just do good. But after experiencing so many setbacks and after so much blood on his hands, he loses his identity. Not only did his actions as Sukuna result in thousands of innocents dying, he was unable to save Nanami or Nobara. He already lost Junpei, which messed him up pretty bad, and after all the deaths and losses in Shibuya, he was already pushed off the deep end. He stopped seeing himself as a person with desires or dreams, and instead saw himself as a tool, a vessel. This shift in mindset is scary, because most protagonists start to gain an identity as the story progresses. They experience setbacks, then learn to grow from them and start to find their footing in the world. But Yuji completely abandons himself. After Shibuya, he says how he's ready to die at any moment. Not just die, but ready to sacrifice himself. After everything Sukuna did with his body, and after not being able to save his friends, he gives up on himself. He sees himself as nothing but a tool that brings destruction. So he tries to do what little good he can as a cog in the machine, a nameless grunt who tries to help in whatever way he can, before he ultimately dies. Even at this stage, after losing all of his sense of worth, the story still isn't done taking things from him. Junpei, then Nanami, Nobara, Gojo, and then finally Choso. They're all people Yuji cared about, and all people who suffered brutal deaths. Everyone who gets close to Yuji suffers in some way. Not because he's cursed, but because the story keeps forcing him to witness loss. It wants to keep forcing suffering onto him to make him stronger, but he never chose to be stronger. He never chose this path or this destiny. What makes these deaths hurt even more is that Yuji rarely gets closure. Junpei dies before Yuji can save him. Nanami dies while entrusting the future to him. Nobara disappears without ever getting a proper goodbye. Even after all this time, Yuji never gets the chance to stop and process what happened. The next crisis always arrives before he can heal from the last one. Most protagonists get moments to mourn their losses and move forward. Yuji just keeps collecting them. The grief never really leaves. It just gets buried under the next responsibility. On top of that, most protagonists are rewarded for their relationships, through strength and motivation. But we see Yuji constantly punished for forming relationships. Not only was he a tool bred to house evil incarnate, he's powerless to take control of his fate in any way. Despite his strength, he's never able to use it to save the people that are right in front of him. All he could do was put his head down and keep moving forward. And that's what makes his suffering feel so cruel. Yuji isn't losing people because of his bad choices. Most of the time, he's desperately trying to prevent these outcomes. He throws himself into danger again and again, trying to save people around him, but the story keeps showing him the same lesson. Effort doesn't guarantee a happy outcome. No matter how hard he fights, there are just some things he can't stop. That helplessness becomes a recurring part of his character. And all of that suffering changes what Yuji believes his purpose even is. Yuji was never meant to be happy. His entire story of tragedy and helplessness, it shows just one thing. The happiness was never the destination. His life was never his own. His grandfather once told him to do good because he's a strong kid, and that burdens him. After becoming a vessel and killing thousands of people, then losing himself and becoming a cog in the machine, then becoming an execution target for his crimes, and then finally a weapon against Sukuna, everything he's experienced so far has pushed him beyond what normal happiness could be. From the start, the story never gives him any dreams or aspirations, or a future. It gives him something much more cruel: responsibility. His role was never to defeat the villain and then live happily ever after. It was to keep enduring past the suffering. And that's why Yuji feels so different from most shonen protagonists, because he's so powerless. He never really becomes overpowered like other characters you see, like Naruto or Luffy. Usually suffering is temporary in their stories. It's something the hero goes through on the way to achieving their dream, something that's worth the pain. The pain has a purpose because it's leading somewhere. But with Yuji, suffering isn't a phase or an arc. It's the literal cost of being who he is. Every time he overcomes one tragedy, another one takes its place. The story never treats happiness as something waiting for him at the finish line. It treats responsibility as the only thing he can carry forward. This is exactly why Yuji feels so different from other protagonists. Most heroes suffer so they can eventually reach a better outcome, but Yuji suffers because that's what his role in the story demands. From the moment he became Sukuna's vessel, every step forward cost him something. First his certainty, then his innocence, then his friends, then finally his own identity. And maybe that's why so many people connect with him. Because Yuji isn't fighting for a happy ending anymore. He's fighting because people are counting on him. And even after everything the world takes from him, he keeps moving forward anyway.